There's a strange kind of loneliness that arrives in your 30s. Not the loneliness of being physically alone, the deeper kind. The kind where you sit in a crowded room and quietly realize your life is drifting somewhere you never intended to go. You still wake up early, still pay the bills, still answer messages, still smile when people ask how you're doing. But somewhere underneath all of it, there's a weight, a silent disappointment you can't fully explain. Because deep down, you know something terrifying. You could have become more than this. And maybe the hardest part is knowing it didn't happen all at once. Your life didn't collapse in a dramatic moment. It happened slowly. One postponed decision, one ignored opportunity, one extra hour wasted, one promise to yourself quietly abandoned. Again and again and again, until one day, you look in the mirror and realize you've become someone you barely recognize. That's the terrifying thing about regret. It doesn't scream at you immediately. It waits, quietly, patiently, like rust forming beneath the surface. And by the time most people feel its full weight, they no longer have the energy to change. Jim Rohn once said, "The pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs tons." Most people hear that quote and think it's about productivity. It's not. It's about identity. It's about the slow psychological death that happens when a human being repeatedly betrays their own potential. Because every time you avoid what you know you should do, something inside you weakens. Not your muscles, not your intelligence, your self-respect. And people rarely talk about this. They talk about success, money, status, motivation. But almost nobody talks about the private grief of becoming less than who you know you could have been. That grief follows people everywhere. Into marriages, into jobs, into middle age, into retirement. You can see it in exhausted eyes at traffic lights, in fathers sitting silently at dinner tables, in men staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. wondering where the years went. Because time is strange. When you're young, you think you have endless amounts of it. You think transformation can always begin tomorrow. You think your future self will somehow become more disciplined, more focused, more courageous. But human beings don't magically transform with time. They become amplified versions of their daily habits. That's the hidden truth most people never realize until it's too late. Your life is not built in dramatic moments. It's built in invisible routines. And unfortunately, so is regret. Regret is accumulated quietly, like dust gathering in an abandoned room. One day skipped at the gym becomes 10 years of deteriorating health. One avoided conversation becomes emotional distance inside a marriage. One delayed dream becomes a lifetime of wondering what could have happened. People imagine regret as some emotional explosion. But most regret feels quieter than that. Heavier, more haunting. It feels like sitting in a parking lot after work, unable to gather the energy to walk inside your own house. It feels like hearing younger people talk about dreams with excitement you no longer remember feeling. It feels like realizing your children are growing up while your mind is somewhere else entirely. And maybe worst of all, it feels normal. That's the danger. Human beings can normalize almost anything. Exhaustion, emptiness, disconnection, silent misery. You can adapt to a life that is slowly destroying you. That's why discipline matters far beyond achievement. Discipline is not punishment. It's protection. Protection against becoming someone you secretly resent. Because every act of discipline sends a message to your mind. I still matter. And that changes everything. People think discipline is about intensity, but real discipline is usually quiet, unimpressive, repetitive. It's waking up tired and still keeping your word to yourself. It's going for the walk nobody sees. It's turning off the phone when your mind wants distraction. It's sitting alone with your thoughts instead of escaping them. And strangely enough, Those tiny moments begin rebuilding something most adults have lost: trust in themselves. That's the real reward of discipline. Not six-pack abs, not money, not admiration. Inner stability. The ability to look at yourself honestly without shame consuming you. Because shame grows where avoidance lives. Every avoided responsibility creates psychological friction inside the mind. You may distract yourself temporarily, but your nervous system remembers. Your mind keeps score. This is why people feel anxious even when nothing is technically wrong. Their spirit knows they are abandoning themselves. And abandonment always creates suffering, especially self-abandonment. There are men making decent money right now who feel completely empty. Women smiling in family photos while internally exhausted beyond words. People surrounded by comfort, yet deeply disconnected from meaning. Because comfort and peace are not the same thing. Comfort can become a prison, a slow, padded room where ambition quietly dies. And modern life makes this worse. Everything is designed to remove friction. Food without effort. Entertainment without silence. Pleasure without connection. Validation without achievement. The human brain becomes addicted to easy stimulation, while slowly losing the ability to endure meaningful discomfort. But meaning has always required discomfort. Always. Every worthwhile transformation demands friction. A strong body requires strain. A strong marriage requires difficult conversations. A strong mind requires solitude and reflection. A meaningful life requires sacrifice. And that's the part society avoids discussing. Because sacrifice isn't glamorous. Nobody applauds the man waking up at 5 a.m. to rebuild his life quietly. Nobody sees the woman fighting depression while still showing up for her children every day. Nobody celebrates the lonely discipline of becoming emotionally mature. But those invisible battles shape destiny. Not talent, not luck, daily decisions. That's what Jim Rohn understood better than most people. Success is rarely explosive. Failure isn't either. Both happen gradually. You become your habits long before you become your results. And the terrifying thing is, the brain adapts to mediocrity faster than people realize. At first, skipping discipline feels uncomfortable. Then it feels harmless. Then it becomes identity. I'm just tired. I'm just busy. I'm just not that type of person. And eventually, you stop expecting greatness from yourself altogether. That's the real tragedy. Not failure. Surrender. The moment a human being quietly lowers their standards for their own life. You can actually see this happen in people's posture, in their energy, in the way they speak about the future. Some people age physically, others age spiritually. And spiritual aging often begins with repeated disappointment in oneself. Because every broken promise leaves a scar, especially the promises nobody else heard. I'll start next week. I'll change this year. I'll finally take control. The mind remembers every abandoned commitment, which is why self-confidence cannot be built through positive thinking alone. Confidence is evidence. Evidence that you can rely on yourself. That's why discipline creates peace. Not because disciplined people are perfect, but because they stop negotiating with their own excuses. And excuses are seductive, especially for intelligent people. Smart people can rationalize almost anything. They can explain why they're stuck, why they're overwhelmed, why life is unfair. But explanation is not transformation. At some point, every human being must confront a painful question. How much longer will I continue betraying myself? That question changes lives. Because eventually, pain creates clarity. There comes a moment in adulthood where avoidance becomes more painful than effort. That's when transformation begins. Not through inspiration, through exhaustion. The exhaustion of carrying regret. And regret is unbelievably heavy. Heavier than discipline ever was. Discipline hurts in moments. Regret hurts constantly. Discipline asks for effort now. Regret steals peace later. Discipline costs ounces. Regret costs years. That's why older people often speak differently about time. They understand something younger people rarely feel deeply enough. Life accelerates. 1 year becomes 5. 5 becomes 15. And suddenly your parents are older. Your body feels different. Your children no longer need your hand when crossing the street. Time doesn't ask whether you're ready. It keeps moving. That realization alone can break a person emotionally, especially when they know they wasted enormous parts of themselves. Potential, love, creativity, courage, buried beneath distraction and fear. And fear is often the hidden force behind procrastination. Not laziness. Fear. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of inadequacy. Fear of discovering what you're truly capable of. Because once you discover your potential, you can no longer comfortably hide from it. That's why many people stay numb. Numbness protects them from confronting the gap between who they are and who they could become. But numbness comes at a cost. It drains color from life. Food tastes duller. Conversations feel emptier. Mornings feel heavier. The soul slowly suffocates beneath repetition without purpose. And unfortunately, modern people are drowning in distraction while starving for meaning. They consume endlessly. Because silence forces self-confrontation. A quiet room can become unbearable when you've spent years running from yourself. But healing often begins there. In silence. Not loud motivation. Not dramatic breakthroughs. Just honest silence. The kind where you finally admit, I'm not living the way I know I should. That admission is painful, but strangely freeing. Because truth, even painful truth, restores dignity. And dignity matters more than motivation. People wait to feel motivated before changing. But disciplined people understand something different. Action creates emotion, not the other way around. You don't become disciplined because you feel strong. You become strong because you practice discipline while weak. That's the hidden psychological shift. And once that shift happens, your entire identity begins changing. You stop seeing discipline as punishment. You begin seeing it as self-respect. Going to bed earlier becomes self-respect. Saving money becomes self-respect. Working out becomes self-respect. Keeping your word becomes self-respect. And suddenly, discipline stops feeling heavy. Because meaning makes burdens lighter. That's why parents can endure sleepless nights for their children. Why soldiers endure hardship for brotherhood. Why people endure suffering for love. Meaning transforms pain. Without meaning, even easy lives feel unbearable. With meaning, difficult lives become survivable. This is why some wealthy people are miserable, while some exhausted workers still possess inner peace. One has comfort, the other has purpose, and purpose changes the texture of suffering. You can endure almost anything when you know why you're enduring it. Nietzsche understood that. So did the Stoics. So did Jim Rohn. Discipline is not about becoming a machine. It's about reclaiming authorship over your life. Because if you don't consciously direct your habits, your impulses will. And impulses are dangerous guides. They seek immediate comfort, not long-term peace. Human beings naturally drift toward ease. But ease rarely creates fulfillment. Growth does. Responsibility does. Contribution does. The uncomfortable truth is that many adults are not exhausted because life is hard. They're exhausted because they're disconnected from purpose. There's a massive psychological difference. Purpose energizes. Aimlessness drains. That's why two people can work equally hard while experiencing completely different emotional realities. One feels burdened. The other feels alive. And the difference is meaning. Deep down, every human being wants to feel useful, needed, respected, capable, not merely entertained. Entertainment numbs pain temporarily. Purpose heals it gradually. But purpose demands discipline. Because meaningful lives are built intentionally, not accidentally. And unfortunately, most people wait for crisis before they change. A health scare, a divorce, a breakdown, a funeral. Suddenly they realize time was never guaranteed. Suddenly distractions feel meaningless. Suddenly they understand how fragile life really is. But wisdom arrives earlier for those willing to pay attention. You can learn from observation instead of catastrophe. You can notice the older man drinking alone every night and ask yourself, what decisions led him there? You can notice bitterness in someone's voice and understand. Unresolved regret changes personality. People don't become cynical overnight. Disappointment accumulates. That's why disciplined living is deeply emotional, not merely practical. It protects your future emotional state. Every healthy habit is a vote for the person you're becoming. An identity is built through repeated votes, not declarations. Anyone can announce goals. Few people endure the quiet repetition transformation requires. Because repetition is boring, and modern minds are addicted to novelty. But greatness has always been repetitive. The same workouts, the same principles, the same routines, day after day. The beauty is that eventually, those repetitions become character. And character creates peace. Not because life becomes easier, but because you stop being at war with yourself. That inner war destroys countless people. The war between what they know and what they do. The war between desire and discipline. The war between comfort and growth. Many people lose that battle slowly without realizing it. But some people wake up, usually in silence, usually after enough pain. They realize nobody is coming to rescue them. No perfect moment is arriving. No magical motivation is permanently appearing. There is only daily choice, daily effort, daily responsibility. And strangely, that realization becomes liberating. Because if your habits created your suffering, your habits can also create your healing. Slowly, quietly, one disciplined action at a time. Not perfection, just honesty. Honesty about where you are. Honesty about what needs to change. Honesty about the years you cannot recover. That honesty hurts, but denial hurts longer. And maybe that's what adulthood truly is. Not becoming fearless, not becoming perfect, becoming honest enough to stop escaping your own life. The people who eventually find peace are rarely the most talented. They're the ones who stop abandoning themselves. The ones who continue showing up despite exhaustion. The ones who understand that self-respect is earned privately. Alone. Early mornings. Late nights. Difficult conversations. Repeated effort. That's where identity is forged. Quietly. Like stone shaped by years of pressure. And eventually something remarkable happens. The same discipline that once felt painful begins feeling freeing. Because discipline removes chaos. It removes internal negotiation. It creates stability in a world full of noise. And stability becomes priceless as you age. Not excitement. Not endless stimulation. Peace. Real peace. The kind that allows you to sit alone without needing distraction. The kind that lets you look in the mirror without shame swallowing you whole. The kind that comes from knowing, I did not waste my life completely. That sentence matters more than people realize. Because near the end of life, most people will not care about appearances. They will care about truth. Did they love deeply? Did they live honestly? Did they become who they were capable of becoming? Or did fear quietly make their decisions for them? That's the question waiting for all of us. And the answer is being written right now. Through ordinary days most people underestimate. That's why discipline matters. Not because it makes you impressive, because it keeps regret from owning your future. The pain of discipline really does weigh ounces. A workout, a difficult phone call, a disciplined morning, a restrained impulse. Small things. But regret weighs tons. It sits beside hospital beds, sleeps in broken marriages, echoes through lonely apartments, whispers during sleepless nights. And by the time most people truly understand that, they would give anything to go back and carry those ounces instead. So maybe tonight, before the distractions begin again, before another week disappears unnoticed, sit quietly for a moment and ask yourself honestly, what future pain am I creating through today's comfort? That question could change your life, because the future is not arriving someday. It's being built now, in silence, in routines, in choices nobody applauds. And perhaps the most powerful thing a human being can do is stop waiting to become someone else and begin becoming trustworthy to themselves again. Slowly, patiently, one disciplined decision at a time.